Growing up in Pittsburgh, I've realized that there's probably nothing more sacred, nothing that causes more distress to our city, and nothing that causes us to celebrate more than the Pittsburgh Steelers. And what an honor and great gift that we have to be able to welcome Tom Rooney. He's one of the nation's most prominent professionals and music venues, sports management. He has over 3 decades of experience with things like Pace Entertainment, the old Civic Arena, which I used to love watching the Penguins play in. The Pittsburgh Penguins, obviously the Pittsburgh Spirit, even the soccer and the Meadows and the Steelers and the NFL. He's brokered and produced over 34 NFL, MLB stadium concerts for people like Kenny Chesney, Taylor Swift, Jimmy Buffett, and all these incredible things that he's been able to do. Tom, welcome to the show. I just had a quick question for you, though. What's, of all the venues that you've been able to work with in concert, what's your favorite venue?
You know, probably the Civic Arena. You know, I was an usher there when I was going to school at Duquesne University. I would work sometimes as a stagehand and even a cleanup crew. And then, you know, I worked 10 years for the DeBartolos there. So I was ultimately the venue manager there. Then I came back as a tenant with Lemieux Group. So I had sort of 3 runs there, you know, and it's really, really part of my fiber. We have a book coming out next year on the 60th anniversary of the Civic Arena opening with some local writers and a lot of great memories. So I would say the Civic Arena.
The Civic Arena had some historic things go on there. First of all, just the build of it was kind of unique. Talk a little bit about that and how come that created such a wonderful atmosphere for it.
Well, the Kaufman family wanted to have a place where there could be an outdoor presentation of Broadway. And so they added a $1 million donation, which added a $9 million cost to the original design of the Civic Arena. The funny thing about the arena and the roof opening is that it was created for the symphony and the Civic Light Opera, and they were only around for a few years because when the roof opened, the sound went out. So the sound was just terrible in there. But we reused it a lot for the Skyline series in the 80s, and there were a number of other special events.
So the original use of the Civic Arena was not really for hockey?
It was multi-purpose. The Penguins weren't around yet. There was a minor league hockey team called the Hornets. It was meant to be, it was both the convention center and arena, very, very multi-purpose. There was a place called the Exhibit Hall downstairs where they would do the car show and the gun show. This is all previous to Pittsburgh having a convention center. So it was a very, very multi-purpose venue.
So growing up, where did you grow up? Talk a little bit about your family.
Sure. Yes, so I grew up on the north side, Annunciation Church, Sisters of St. Joseph's, who I think about every time I'm down in Baden.
That's smart.
And yeah, so, you know, my father worked for the Steelers for many years. You know, we always talk about the glory days of the Steelers, but my dad on Fridays.
Sorry, what's your dad's name?
Oh, Vincent.
And
Timothy.
how is he related to the founder of the Steelers?
Brother. So Art Rooney, the chief, as they call him, was my uncle. So big Irish Catholic family. You know how that works.
How many brothers and sisters did your dad have?
I had 9. There was 9 in his family. I'm named after a World War II killed in action Marine from Guam. And, you know, the Steelers were a very modest enterprise back in the 50s and 60s. The NFL had really not broken through yet. You know, college football was the king of the land. And I always tell the story that the Steelers were so bad that on Fridays when my dad would come home with a wad of tickets for me to give out and my paper route, I used to get beat up occasionally for giving them out because the Steelers were so bad, you know. But television's the thing that made, you know, the NFL what it was, the 57-58 championship game with, you know, Baltimore and the Giants. And it's really blossomed into probably, you know, at least in North America, the biggest.
Before we get into some of the NFL, what was your dad and mom like? What was it like growing up in the North Side as an Irish Catholic boy with the sisters? And how many brothers and sisters did you have? Talk us back to like what Tom Rooney was like as a little boy growing up with mom and dad and the family.
Yeah, so you know, Annunciation Parish was the center of our, you know, universe. You know, all of us were either choir boys or altar boys or, you know, servers.
So you were an altar boy?
Oh, absolutely.
Did you ever drop the cruets or make any mistakes? And Monsignor comes
you know, I might have snuck a little altar wine and a few wafers that were unconsecrated. I know. I think I confessed that a long time ago, but. Anyway, you know, it was, I can remember getting up, you know, to do the 6:30 mass and trudging through the virgin snow. And actually, I think he's still around. So God bless Father Rutledge. Yes, Father Bill Rutledge. If you're out there, Father, I apologize for saying this, but he was known to sleep in occasionally. So as older boys would have to go pound on the door of the rectory to wake him up or to remind him that there was a 6:30 mass, and he was scheduled to do
it. And how many were in your family? How many brothers and sisters?
We had a total of 7 brothers and sisters. They're all still living. I'm the second to the youngest. And in fact, we're getting together, very modest July 4th event. Or by this time, I guess it will have been July 4th event. But yeah, the church was always the center of our activity. And, went to Duquesne. Duquesne was 13th grade in the Rooney family. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
But,
what impacted you the most if you think about growing up with either your mom or your dad or that faith background that still sticks with you today?
I think the commitment to the sacraments and the importance of the holidays. I still don't eat meat on Fridays, so it's sort of burned into my psyche in that regard.
Just sticking with the meat on Fridays. I worry today because the obligation of Sunday Mass has been taken away during Corona time. And there was this sense before of like, there's these holy days of obligation, and now nobody knows when they are. There's such confusion in that. And it's not that the church ever discouraged to stop not eating meat on Fridays. In fact, it's encouraged to continue even outside of Lent to do that. But there's been so much confusion. So deep down, you've held that routine and that way of offering a sacrifice on Fridays to not eat meat.
I think the thing about my faith is that, I've come to realize that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And, when you run a marathon, 3.5 hours, which was what it took me to run the ones I ran, you have equal parts of, anxiety and fear and exhilaration. And, but at the end, you want to be like St. Paul crossing that finish line saying, hey, in the last letter, I've run the good race. So I think, you have to realize, or I do, that my faith has ebbs and flows to it. And what I look for is more opportunities to express my faith and to do things that sort of keep me in check. One of the things I think that was really good, and as a member of council, you really pushed us on this, and that was adoration. And I thought, I'd be the last person who could have a good experience or worthwhile one with adoration. But now, it's a central part of it. I find myself out there sometimes genuflecting outside the CDC with the Eucharist on the other side of the window. But that's I think my
faith. You were little, we launched it in our great grouping here, especially at Saints John and Paul and at in Conway, Adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. And before Corona time, we actually had 24/7 adoration going here, and we had daily adoration in Conway. So 2 of our 4 churches were hosting opportunities for people to come and be in front of the Blessed Sacrament, to be in front of our Eucharistic Lord. Now, when I first contacted you, you kind of were skeptical.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden you say you walk out and you dance and sing like Fred Astaire.
I did.
What's the difference?
Well, I don't know what it is. I think first off, Sister gave us a little bit of support on what, the expectations were. But I have a file of readings that I take in. They're my favorite gospel readings. And, I have to tell you that for me, my favorite time to be in there is when I'm alone with the Eucharist. I feel, I really feel, the power of it. So, and it carries forward, I know the Holy Spirit descended upon the apostles, but it's the wind beneath my wings, for carrying me forward. But I look for more opportunities to volunteer and do those things because I'm afraid I'm just taking, my life for granted and taking, one of the parishioners from our great grouping said to me, one of our parishes down in the valley, she said, we're so lucky to have St. John and Paul as part of our group because it's in a more affluent area and a more upscale area. I said, no, we're the lucky ones because we've been given the opportunity to support you and serve you and to manifest our faith because that's what we have to do. I always wonder if I were tried as a Catholic, whether I'd be proven guilty or not.
That's a good question, especially for today when you see saints being torn down, and the truth of our Catholic faith really being riveted by a lot of social distress. And
so somebody said to me,
it's a good time to be a martyr, maybe. In fact, that's the easiest way to get to heaven.
Absolutely. Somebody said to me, what's your faith? And I said, I'm a practicing Catholic. I've been practicing and practicing and practicing, and I'll keep doing it until I get it right.
Just go back a little bit. You went to Duquesne. What did you study at Duquesne?
I was a journalism major there. I thought that was going to be my, career path. I worked for a local newspaper in the Dardanelle publications, and the paper folded after about a year of me being there. I got involved at the Meadows doing some writing for them and support for them, and decided I really liked the marketing and promotion aspect. But, Duquesne's another part of an indelible part of my, background. My favorite course at Duquesne was a course called Rational Foundations of the Catholic Faith.
Wow.
And the reason it is because that was the 70s, and that's where everything was challenged, and everybody over 30 was suspect, right? And we had a priest, and he lived a long life. I got to see him maybe a decade or so ago, Father Supple. I don't know if you know Edwin Supple.
Is he a Spiritan?
Yes, he was a Spirit.
Father? Holy Ghost Father, I guess.
And we had to take either philosophy or a few, or a certain amount of credits you had to take. So I took the easy way out. I took Italian because I had Latin, and it was just an extension of that. And I took the Catholic courses because it was an extension of that. But it seemed to me every day he stood up there, and he, the students would challenge him, and he would always say, "Is it reasonable to believe? Is it reasonable to believe rational foundations?" And, that carried forward with me more than any teacher or any course I ever had at Duquesne was Father Supple.
It's interesting that you say that, because that was one of St. John Paul II's most important teachings. It was called Fides et Ratio, which is the relationship of faith and reason.
Right.
And I think sometimes we Catholics can get it wrong by only looking at things from a spiritualistic perspective, and not that the spirit doesn't inform the mind, but if God created us, he created us to have this harmony between reason and faith, between our intellect and our souls.
Sure.
And so being able to ground ourselves in good reason. I mean, just read Thomas Aquinas, and you'll find some of the great reasons for that, or St. Augustine. Did you, going through college, think then you would get involved with doing all these incredible concert venues, athletics?
I
start thinking.
I was in a band.
Oh, you were in
I
a
was
band?
the lead singer in a rock and roll band.
Was it
Yeah,
called
we were called
UFO
the UFOs.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Did you actually write music and things?
Well, not then, but later on, I actually have some songs that have been included in some CDs. So I'm pretty pleased with that. But I guess everybody wanted to be in a band. When the Beatles and the Stones were out, and we our band was really rooted in R&B, and so we got a chance to play a lot of events. I'll tell you a funny story. So we were sort of a blue-eyed soul kind of a band, and the city. They had these programs during the summer where they would take a tractor trailer and open the side of it and do summer concerts in the street. It was more, from the standpoint of, trying to do extensions into the community. So the first time, and we did a lot of stuff like the Temptations and, the Miracles and Wilson Pickett and those sorts of things. And so our first assignment was the Hill District, and we thought, okay, this should be fun. We might be a little nervous. We found out what it was to be a minority.
Sure.
So we went up there, and we were very well received. So our next assignment was Manchester, and we said, oh, okay, I'm sure we'll come around to playing some other place. And so our drummer, his dad was a manager, and he went to the guy who was scheduling it, and he said, hey, these have been our assignments, and some of the friends of the band and family, they're a little nervous about going into, neighborhoods where maybe they wouldn't feel as safe. And the guy said, look, you're our only hope. All these long-haired hippie bands, we could never send them into there. He said, you guys get over. I said, oh, we understood our assignment at that point in time. So
at that point, did you have long hair and hippie? Or
yes, well, yeah, kind of. I have no hair now. Yeah, no, but but we love that sort of music. And of course the root of that music, soul music, is really religious music.
Did you get that musical talent from maybe your mom or your dad or anybody in your family, or did it just kind of come?
I think it was just expressing, my ability to express myself, and which suited me very well later on, as I was doing the sales ends of things. But I've always loved the music component. When we were downtown, when I was with St. Mary's, I was on parish council there for 16 years. We did a lot with St. Benedict the Moor.
Sure.
So we got a great experience in working with that church. And I saw Father Tom recently has been named as that's the one parish, I guess, that's own parish, right? I think that's really sort of cool. That's a beautiful. We'd go to the 4 o'clock mass there, and on Saturdays, and it would go to 5:30 or so, because when they did Sign of Peace, I'm telling you, they did the Sign of Peace. They came out from the aisles and up and down, and it was a real procession. But
it's a real community.
Yeah, it is. Yes,
they're trying to create. I think St. Benedict the Moor has a great place in the heart of our city, and actually, it's right near the Civic Arena.
Exactly,
which is a place that you know pretty well. Exactly. I didn't realize that was your first gig. So then, after your musical career, or during your musical career, is that where you started to get involved in like being interested in Civic Arena?
I think what happened was I worked for at the Meadows. The owners of the Meadows were Joe Hardy, 84 Lumber, and Ed Ryan Homes. So Ryan Homes, Ed started Ryan Homes. He came back from the war. He promised his wife that he'd build them a great house. And Ryan, they were both very, very active Catholics. And, Ed finished the home, and he was just admiring it from the curbside when a car pulled up, and a guy said in a big sedan, he said, "That's a nice house." He said, "Do you think you'd sell it?" Ed said, "I would never sell it. I built it for my wife, Ann." And the guy said, "I'll give you $15,000 for that house." And Ed said, "Okay." And the light went on, and he realized he became part of the post-war boom, the baby boom, where homes were needed. Joe Hardy of 84 Lumber, he was actually in the Hardy and Hayes family, the jewelry. You talk about a bull in a china shop. If anybody knows Joe, he was still around, God bless him. But, Ed convinced Joe that, hey, I needed a lumber wholesaler. I'm building homes like crazy. So 84 Lumber was created because of Ryan Homes. So I got the flavor of working on sort of the real estate end with them. And then I worked for DeBartolo for 10 years. They had 80 shopping malls, around the country.
And DeBartolo, he owned... he would eventually own the Penguins and the 49ers,
yes,
and other sports franchises.
Right. Yeah. Oh, the racetracks.
The racetracks, yeah.
So, my family, my Uncle Art Rooney, who founded the Steelers, actually sold the Bartolo Randall Park Raceway in Cleveland, which became one of his first malls, Randall Park Mall. So, so I sort of got the gene of that. And then that worked into, developing Star Lake Amphitheater. I opened 1990. That was the first of many that we opened.
I actually got to go to the Billy Joel concert that you successfully marketed and was sold out. That was a fabulous concert. When he played Allentown,
yes,
the place went nuts. Do you remember that?
Yes. I also remember it probably took you 3 days to get home, or 3 days to get there. Yeah.
But what we did was we brought a little hibachi.
Right.
And afterwards, we were going to tailgate. This is before tailgating was outlawed as it is now and all that stuff. So we spent, I don't know what time I got home that night, but it was definitely a great night. I didn't care about the traffic. The traffic was awful, but we were prepared.
Yeah. Well, and then I started my own company in 2003, which is Rooney Sports Entertainment. And we both basically do music and sports venue development. We did Robert Morris's new building here. We were involved with Stage AE. Most of the work we do is around the country.
So that was kind of your professional track. Personally, you say you have children, your family. Right. Talk a little bit about your wife and your children.
Yeah. So my wife is very active in her church, which is Swickley Presbyterian Church. I never was able to get her converted. This is what would happen downtown. I would
what's her name? Sorry?
Judy.
Judy. Yep.
So when I was at St. John, St. Paul, or St. Mary's downtown, we would do the 4 o'clock mass on Christmas Eve. Then I would go up and help her at her church, with her 6 o'clock service. So she's very active in her community. My son is at USC. He works. His name is Joshua. Yeah. We got out of that, Dan Art, Irish Catholic name,
Thank
sort
you
of
for
thing.
doing that,
Yeah, I know.
It confuses all of us. That's for sure.
Confuses me. People say, "Are you related to Tim Rooney?" I said, "Well, you mean my brother or 4 cousins named Tim?" So I went Old Testament with Joshua. We went that route. So he's at USC.
You mean in California?
In California, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
And what's he doing?
He is the chief revenue officer for the LA Coliseum, nice. And he does concerts and things like that, special events and things like that. So yeah. It's something that's continued, and we love doing brick and mortar. I'm on the we do work for the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum on the board there. We're doing a new visitor center there. We work with Father Demi to help build a church in his Nigeria. In terms of the windows and the sacramentals. So we're very oriented to that. So.
Before we move on to the Steelers and things, what has been, would you say, some of your highlights? Like, I know that you've gotten to meet Taylor Swift.
Right.
What's she like? These are some people that, look at that picture there, Tom.
Oh, my God. Yes. Well. So that was at Heinz Field.
Taylor Swift, what is she like meeting?
That was at Heinz Field the day she did the national anthem, which was the day after. She was the opening act for Lone Star at the Washington Wild Things ballpark. Oh. And at that point, it was 4,000 people. It was the most she ever performed for. People who were at Three Rivers that day or Heinz Field that day would remember that she did an air guitar. She did 4 concerts. So they're from the Scranton area, up in that area. She is from Wyomissing, PA, her family, and we got connected through local radio, Rocky or Froggy Radio. The guy who was the program manager, he worked with Taylor Swift's dad, Scott Swift, and so we were able to get involved with her sort of early.
So you kind of put her on the map.
Oh well, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Because before she was big, she.
Well, we were. Let's just say we were the promoter of the biggest show she had ever done. To that age, and we got to spend some time. She was 15, at the time. So, and she's obviously become an international star. So,
and you've met Kenny Chesney, Jimmy Buffett, all these different characters. Is there any of them that you, particularly maybe behind the scenes, you just found interesting aspects of any of their lives?
Yeah,
or just getting to know any of those characters?
Kenny and Jimmy are similar in the sense that they're very grounded. Kenny was a marketing major when in college, and Jimmy is very, very unassuming. I mean, Jimmy will walk into a diner or a cafe. They you never know those guys. They usually hide under a ball cap so people can't recognize them. Those are the fun guys to be around. They've had great longevity, and they don't think of themselves as anything, but they consider themselves more in the music business. You're usually an artist or you're a performer. They're one of the few that are actually both. So they can have financial success and still be thought of as an artist. A lot of artists don't have financial success. They tend to sort of just bob along. But I find them to be 2 of the easiest going people. People say, what's the key to having a conversation with one of them? And I remember maybe the most famous person that I've engaged is Baryshnikov, because we did an event with him, and is if you can be in a conversation with them as if you and I were having the same conversation, where you talk about something other than what would be obvious to talk about. So Baryshnikov was just taking up golf. So we were able to help nurture his. Give a little bit
of background of who he was.
Oh, he's a world dancer, right. And renowned, a dancer. And I'll tell you a funny story. So we did a show with him with the White River Show, which a bunch of dancers doing, the classical dance routine. And I got a call from his manager just before he came to town. He said, "Mike," it's called Mikhail, but Mike. Yeah. He said, "Mike's recently taking up golf. Can you can you help them out? And I said, well, sure. So I called the club that we had the relationship with, Star Lake. It was Quicksilver out on up by the airport. And I called the pro and I said, look, and by the way, we sent Neil Young play. A lot of those guys play golf because they're off in the afternoons. They have time, they like to go out and do that. So anyway, so we would get a bill each month showing, okay, this is the activity, the persons who came, whatever. So I get a bill, the month after Barishnikov is there, and it said, it said Barishnikov, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I said, I called the accounting office at Quicksilver, and I said, your computer must have, burped or something, hiccups. And she said, oh yeah, Mr. Rooney, we'll be sure to, fix that. So I get a call back from the guy, the general manager and the pro. He said, don't you know, he stayed the entire week. He said, I gave him lessons. We played every day because his next show wasn't until the next Saturday. I said, so I called his agent back. I said, boy, you really got me, because I got this big bill from them. But, we were happy to do that. So, because he seemed like a regular guy. So,
well, anyway. Moving a little bit towards the Rooney family in general, and your dear uncle Art. What was the story behind him getting the Steelers in 1933? I've heard a lot of things about, was it some type of a racetrack payoff? Was it a passion that he had? Can you clarify a little bit? How did he come into the Steelers, and what was
pro football at that time, was really almost semi-pro football. The Steelers would play on Wednesday nights because they didn't want to play on Fridays and Saturdays because of college and high school football. And you couldn't play on Sundays because of the blue laws at that time. So it was really a modest, undertaking. All the players had other jobs, especially, in the off season. So he was more of a sportsman in that regard. He was a renowned, handicapper. And, something maybe I regret is, that when I was working at the Meadows, he would come out there often, and his assistant, Murray Reagan, would call me, and she would say, Tommy, your uncle's coming out tonight. So we would always reserve a table for him. And of course, he was a big celebrity out there. But one day when we're sitting in the clubhouse and the program was laid out in front of him, he said, Tommy, and he always called me Tommy. His kid brother, for whom I was named, was Tommy. He was killed in Guam. He said, Tommy, he said, I could teach you my system of handicapping. It would take 3.5 weeks. Could you do 3.5 weeks? And of course, I didn't do it, but I always thought it seemed so exacting. 3.5 weeks, not like 4 weeks or a month or, 3.5 weeks, because he really did have a system. Now
what was part of a system? What would that have been like?
All the analytics. I mean, like pole positions and who the rider was, and this is analytics before analytics, and it was all in his head. We always say, okay, here comes Josh Bell up, with a 2-1 count. He's going to get a fastball, and he likes to push it to the opposite field. That's all this analytics. Well, that Art had all that in his head. He had a system, and it really, in those days, they didn't have what was called parimutuel. Parimutuel means that the odds of a horse go up and down based on the flow of the betting. So the house doesn't really lose because the house just takes a take. But in those days, if you bet a horse at 10-1, you got paid 10-1, no matter what, the odds might have been if they float up and down like the stock market. So he literally broke that track. He was asked to leave because he won 10 straight races. That was Saratoga.
Okay. And then how did the Steelers come into the picture?
Well, there was the National Football League, again, was a very modest thing. And, he was quite an athlete himself. He was an Olympian, right? Yeah. Well, he was an Olympic hopeful boxer. Okay. Sports was always a big part of the family. He and my Uncle Dan, who became a Franciscan missionary priest and, sort of the hero of our family, Dan, they were great baseball players. And, I would say that Dan Rooney, for whom my cousin Dan Rooney, who succeeded my cousin Art, is probably is the favorite Rooney in all our family, you know.
Because he was a missionary.
Well, and not only that, but because, you know, he told me the story once, and I got to serve his masses at Annunciation, because Franciscans then had to say mass every day. They were obligated. So when he stayed at my grandmother's home, he would come to Annunciation, and they would pull me out of class for Dan to do his mass, like at 10 a.m. or whatever it would be. So, but he told me the story once, that when he was, I think at age 25 or around that time, he decided to go into seminary, which was a big surprise to everybody. And he was really, really well known as an athlete. And there were a lot of skeptics, and especially the friar who passed out, the garb that the seminarians wore. And he handed Dan a pair of used sandals. And he said, "You won't be here long."
Wow.
Well, that's the last thing they had to say to Dan. That was like, maybe that that friar knew, that, this is the way to get Dan to become a priest. Just tell me there's no way he'd become one. Probably not. But he said, "You won't be here long," because he figured that, he had already tasted so much of the,
Is it true? I mean, one of the reasons maybe that even he had that is Myron Cook tells a story about Dan Rooney playing baseball one time, and it must have been like a minor league team or something like that. And this pitcher throws an inside pitch to him, and Dan looks up to him and says, "If you give me that again, you're going to have some troubles." And so boom, the pitch comes in, might even beamed him, and he chased him with his bat. And the pitcher ran off the mound. They ran out of the stadium. They chased each other around, and I don't know how that ended. But do you think that was probably part of the reason?
Well, there was,
like, I don't know if this guy's going to make it.
Dan was playing with Art in Frostburg, Maryland, and such an event happened, and it turned into a riot, between the two teams. And Dan and Art were banned from ever playing baseball in Frostburg again. So for Dan and Art, baseball was a contact sport. So,
Maybe that's
absolutely.
why baseball's not coming on right now. They're so worried about COVID-19 and baseball, maybe because of the Rooney effect. They need a Rooney rule there too.
Yeah.
But,
well, my uncle, my uncle Art, his brothers or his sons, Dan, there's a big family, and his brothers, Dan's brothers would tell me the story. The twins, John and Pat, they would say that, this is the days before I-79, and they would drive to Canada. That was a place they like to go. And if a Mustang can pass everything but a gas station, Art Rooney could pass everything but a church, and especially if it was a shrine. And they would say, driving along Route 19, Zeuxnople and Portersville and all these places that are just road map signs on, sign markers on 79 now, they had to go through there, and they'd sit in the back of the seat and say, "Oh no, not another church." Art could not pass a church without going in and, dipping his hand in the holy water and saying a few prayers and leaving. But Art loved to go to the shrines. He was really
and
really
Art
big.
also, even when he owned the Steelers and was such a renowned person in the North Side, he never forgot his roots there. When somebody would pass away, he would go to their funeral, make sure there were flowers. Is that true?
I was one of the people that were occasionally asked to sort of drive him around. Actually, my cousin Jimmy Laughlin mostly had that case, but it was true that I had so many people over the years, and occasionally still happen to say, my father died, and and Art Rooney showed up at the funeral home, and everybody's jaw dropped. Now, I'm not sure Art really actually knew all those people, but he felt very close to everybody in the North Side. And I think there was something about death and passing away that he found very profound, that ultimately he knew we were all going to be headed that way. But he was very well known for showing up at funeral homes and things and surprising people. So, and
when you look back at how he got the Steelers, what was it that actually brought the Steeler franchise to the Rooney family?
Well, it was $2,500, and that's all it really took.
That was the price.
That was the price for an expansion franchise then.
What are they worth now?
Oh, probably $1 billion or something like that. Yeah, pretty good investment. Yes, but You know, I think it was just to be a player. My uncle loved baseball and many times told me that he would have loved to own the Pirates. And, you know, when the Penguins were having, but they were owned by the Galbraith family and not available. When the Penguins were having financial troubles in the 70s, he was actually approached about buying the team. But the NFL had a rule that if you were the majority owner of an NFL team, you could not be a majority owner of a team in another league, because, you know, the leagues competed for TV revenues and things like that. So it was a modest enterprise. My uncles, both Art and Jack, they made a lot of money as boxing promoters. They did a lot of boxing at Duquesne, events at Duquesne Gardens, you know, at Forbes Field, heavyweight championship fights. So football was a business along with the racetracks, and it, you know, ultimately, you know, it evolved to be, you know, what it is. And
one of the turning points for the Steelers, wouldn't you say, was hiring Chuck Noll?
Yep.
And really somebody who had a real understanding of football and how to do that.
Right.
Do you remember Chuck Noll? Do you remember your uncle's relationship with
Chuck
Noll? How did that come about?
Well, I think we have to give Dan Rooney, Art's son, the Lions part of the credit there, because my uncle Art had a good soul, but he was often known to hire his friends, and, you know, his friends weren't always the most, you know, capable in those positions. And I think Dan, when, you know, the opportunity came up to hire a new coach, you know, that's when Dan really blossomed. And, you know, he, you know, the Steelers have hired 3 head coaches, you know, since beginning with Chuck Noll, all defensive coordinators, you know, and Dan was a big believer in defense first. So, I got to know Chuck. Chuck went to Dayton University. He was a star there. And, you know,
a very devout Catholic.
Yeah, he was. Yes. I remember when they hired Bill Cowher, and it was, I remember Bill saying something like, well, geez, I'm not even Catholic, you know, but, you know, yeah. So, and Dan, you know, Dan continued the tradition of Art, you know, daily communicant. I used to see Dan when I would have to do the lecturing, serving at the 7 a.m. Mass weekdays at St. Mary's, you know, occasionally Dan would be there on days when St. Peter's didn't have the daily Mass. St. Peter's on the north side had cut back to maybe like 2 days a week or whatever. So Dan would go to Mass. And, you know, one of my favorite things to do was to go on those road trips with the Steelers, which I could do occasionally. And you'd fly in on a Saturday, and the first thing you do is go to the hotel and have the Mass.
Oh, that's how they begin there.
Yeah, he would set that up.
And then the next day,
and in fact, our priests at St. Mary's, they did the Masses for the visiting teams.
Oh,
you know, because the same thing happened when Baltimore would come in. They would need somebody to do a Mass over at the Hilton. So our priests over there got to do that a few times. So I went over a few times, but I wasn't a spy. You know?
Yeah, I'm sure you weren't. Yeah.
I didn't see any game plans laying around.
Right. So. No patriot stuff in your life. That's
right.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Talk a little bit about what you've seen now, being from Pittsburgh and all that. The relationship, especially when I was growing up, the late 70s and the early 80s, with the Steelers just coming into a franchise that would be one of the greatest of all time. And then the destruction and the just difficulties of the steel mills and the unemployment. You know, if you look at our great grouping, we have a tremendous mix of just some of the most heroic American workers who, unfortunately, with the steel mills, that didn't really be able to see their careers go through.
Right.
And so you see in the Ambridge area, and you see in the Baden and the Conway area, all these steel mills that are no longer, and a lot of ex-employees from there. But at the same time, there's this pride of the Steelers. And how do you kind of quantify that or remember that time period?
Well, you know, the Steelers were the Pirates originally. You know, that was the original name of the team for the first 5 years or so. And then, you know, they did a name the team contest, believe it or not, and the Steelers name was selected. That was the height of the steel making industry, especially as you moved into the Warriors. My dad used to go out as a ticket sales guy for the Steelers, and he would go out, you know, at 3 o'clock on Fridays of home games and sell tickets to the guys leaving the 3 o'clock shift. So at the time that, you know, the whole industry started to crater, you know, the affinity between what Pittsburgh's legacy had been and the team that carried its name was really important, especially to those families and those steel workers who, even though they didn't have their jobs and careers moving forward, they were very, very proud of Pittsburgh being the arsenal of democracy, which it really was. You know, it is said, and I don't know how they proved it or not, but that 70% of the steel that was used in World War II went over the hot metal bridge over in the Strip. You know, so
so there was a pride there.
Oh yeah.
In our city, and then with that being taken away, it seems like the Steelers were able to kind of play a role in the pride of the city.
Yeah, I think, you know, what was happening then too was the Renaissance that was going through, and, you know, Pittsburgh reinventing itself and no longer, you know, sort of being the smoky city. You know, you see pictures of noonday where the sun's blotted out by the soot in the sky, and you know, businessmen would have to change collars at lunchtime because of the soot. But I think the Steelers, you know, it's important. That's a good legacy to continue versus, you know, maybe the Washington Redskins, which are, there's another call now that, you know, change that name. But, you know, I think Pittsburgh will always be defined as a steel town in mostly a good way, other than the fact there are people who still think of Pittsburgh as a place that once was, which was, you know, a place that was kind of grimy, kind of dirty.
Well, speaking of the Redskins and a lot of the racial tension that we feel, I found it ironic, and maybe it's just I don't know enough history of Art Rooney, of people talking about, well, should they tear down his statue in front of Heinz Field? And to me, growing up in Pittsburgh, I always felt that your family was so connected with so many different groups within our city. And I used to, you know, I got to know Joe Green a little bit, and his love for your uncle seemed to just be incredible, and the way they would go to some of these colleges and bring some of the athletes here to Pittsburgh. But was there a time period where you felt like maybe, I don't see why you'd tear down a statue, but some are saying that there was time in the NFL when they wouldn't allow colored players to come and play.
Right. How
would you quantify your relationship as seeing your uncle in terms of working with minorities?
Right. Well, I think my uncle's record speaks for itself. Obviously, the Rooney Rule is named after, you know, his son Dan, and which, you know, I think Dan, you know, got the inspiration and leadership from that. My uncle was always a big supporter of, you know, the Black-owned businesses and the Pittsburgh Crawfords and the Homestead Grays and those sorts of things. And, you know, but the thing about the Art Rooney statue is that's the people's statue. You know, my Uncle Art would have been the last person in the world who would want a statue for himself over there. But that money was raised by the public, sort of $1 at a time. So that's really sort of the people's statue. So I would be suspect of that. And I know what's going through the country right now with, you know, especially I lived in Texas, you know, where you know, their part in the Civil War was something that they consider a great, you know, part of their legacy. You know, I wasn't a Yankee. I was a damn Yankee. And they had to explain to me that a damn Yankee was somebody that wasn't just visiting. They moved there. But I lived there as part of, you know, working for Pace Entertainment. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, this is a time that the country is looking at, you know, all its things. And you know, if 10% of what a person did was wrong versus the 90% that he did, then there's not that counterbalancing that being accepted anymore. So I think it's almost like a reconciliation process that's going on. You know, it's an examination of conscience of how we, you know, value things. You know, so I think it's a good thing.
I think also what Jesus said was, you know, whoever is perfect, throw the first stone.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that all of us are flawed.
Right.
And to be able to look at our histories and to know that from flawed characters come incredible things, but we all have a mixture of that. And you look at the effect that Art Rooney has had on our city and on our country and on the NFL. I think it's in the Rooney family in general. It's amazing. You know, Uncle Art once said, the biggest thrill wasn't in winning on Sunday, but meeting payroll on
Yes.
Monday. Once I had a steel job for half a day. I never went back to collect my pay. Nobody feels any worse than I do about losing.
Yeah.
There's something about that.
Dan Rooney used to say that you could drive around Pittsburgh on Monday and know whether the Steelers had won or lost the day before.
Absolutely.
Just because of how people, talk to each other. They really did carry the, carry the banner of Pittsburgh. So, and we have so many, expatriates, so many people, their families were relocated, or there's like my son's in California right now, he's got a Steeler vanity bumper sticker out there, and it's not uncommon at all, so because of how the demographics have changed. So
there's no doubt about that. It's a universal thing. I've lived in several cities in Spain and in Italy and in Mexico, and gone all around the world and seen Steeler bars. Everywhere. Moving from Steeler bars and Steelers, let's move to our own great grouping here, Tom. And I can't tell you what help it is to have Tom as a member of our finance council. Finance councils are one of the things in canon law that are mandatory for every parish to have. It's a way in which there's a system of checks and balances of lay people to oversee the finances of a parish. It's also a way for the priest to be able to work within the community to do both charitable giving and meet payroll, as Uncle Art talks about here. And today, especially because of the limited amount of mass attendance, it becomes more and more challenging. But so you were asked to be on the finance council by my predecessor, Father Joseph.
Yeah,
McCaffrey. How did that happen?
Well, you Irish priests are really, really tough. So I had just moved out here, and Father Joe's walking his dog, right? And he sees me a couple days in a row because I'm a walker. I'm a reformed marathoner. I've run a bunch of marathoners. And he said, "Hey, I've seen you here a few times. Where do you go to church?" I said, "Oh, I go right there." And he said, "I'm Father McCaffrey." And I said, "Yeah, I think I know who you are." Well, I can feel the hooks getting into me at that time because, I was at St. Mary's for 15 years downtown, same thing. So he said, "Well, we really need help, counting collections. We need counters." And of course, that evolved into the role of the finance council. And then, you ask, a shout out to Bill and Rosemary Garrity, who created the golf tournament many years ago, raised something like $600,000. They decided that they wanted to pass that mantle on. Rosemary's still involved with us and very helpful. So Mike Furco, no good deed shall go unpunished. So Mike Furco is a very close friend of mine. He's a parishioner. I got him involved, and we've since gotten a lot of other people involved. So
part of the projects that Tom's taken over, which has been a blessing, is a golf outing. I got to meet Jake Caulfield, some other characters out there. I stink at golf, and I made a pledge that I'd actually try to learn how to play golf. So I still have a couple more months to do that, but my time is running out. Talk a little bit about where the money goes for the golf outing, the non-for-profit neighborhood fund that has newly been launched and has been a great way to help. And I think there's some information. Yeah, you can, if anybody's interested in helping out or just finding more about it, you can jump onto our website.
So, Father, you would ask us to create a system where people could apply for donations, and we developed a portal where people could go on and see what, for example, the nonprofit fund would support. And, there have been a number of things like the Catholic missions sending, some of our young folks out of missions.
I think we helped your little sisters with the just
So exactly.
Those dear nuns that put up with you.
Right. So we create a system which is modeled after what a lot of like Highmark and UPMC and others have done, to create a system where people can go on and they can see what the criteria is. And what's been great this year is, because of the need, especially in the Valley, we've been able to sort of change our emphasis a little bit, and and use money to match for some of the food delivery down there for the Senior Connection and those sorts of things. So this year we're adding a new element. We don't have it quite refined yet, but the auction's a big part of our revenue for the golf outing, and we've been able to develop some really good auction items. We have golf with Rocky Blyer coming up, golf with Brian Trottier, a number of other really good things where people who are not even in our parish or not golfers, or they could be anywhere, they could support this fund by doing that. Because with COVID, we're not really sure what the interaction would be, on September 11th when the golf outing is, for things like an auction or even more the traditional things of golf. So
we're planning on doing the fundraiser, the golf outing. We're hoping that we'll be able to golf, but even if it's unable to be able to bring people together, we're going to set up some type of an online portal where you could support through different experiences and things to be able to.
And what we're hoping to do is enlarge that so that if people have a car that they don't need, they want to give away, we can put it on that. So,
and eventually if somebody had like Kenny Chesney tickets.
Oh yeah, I can't go to the hockey game Saturday night. I'm going to throw it on the portal, and then, people can donate and get either those services or those tickets. I think it could be sort of an ongoing thing. People have condos and in Myrtle Beach or Hilton Head that they can make available. So I think we can make it a living, breathing thing and do it. We're also hoping, we're working with Bobby at Good Samaritan, to try to do the raffle that they do online, so that you would be able to buy tickets online. You'd be assigned numbers because we're not sure about the Good Samaritan Festival, how that's going to be impacted by COVID. So we're moving more to that model. So.
Tom, I really appreciate the fact that in our great grouping we have all these different ways in which we've been able to raise money to help others, to help our communities out. And obviously the Good Samaritan Ambridge Festival is a classic. For decades, it's just been a great way to do. Bobby has been running that, and Father Joe Carr and things. So we had a meeting the other day where we got to come together and say, okay, as a great grouping, let's send out invitations to the golf outing, to the festival, and really be able to do that. So hopefully that'll be coming to an address near you at the great grouping. Now, you've also been working with Janet Roberto, and we had a meeting with the mayor of Franklin Park the other day about some possibilities. Obviously, Corona time understood, but perhaps of doing a farmer's market.
Sure.
Tell us about that, and why would that be something that would be of interest?
Well, Judy and I, we go to the one at St. James almost every Saturday.
In Swickley, right?
Yeah, in Swickley, right in their parking lot. And so the idea I think Janet had of maybe doing something like that here. I know they presented to Dennis O'Keefe, and Reach Ebner over at the council at the borough, and they're very supportive because they see that as a great amenity for people who live there. I mean, I'd rather not drive all the way down to downtown Swickley. It'd be great to have it here. So we're going through the steps on that. That particular farmers market benefits the diaconate and priest development program through St. James, and it's run by a deacon there.
And what's so thrilling about that, to be honest, is that there's a lot of young men joining the seminary. We just had an ordination of 3 young men and several permanent deacons. We've done several programs on the diaconate, and to be able to get fresh produce, and at the same time, it's a great twofer.
Sure, yeah. So the vendors, it was important to get Sorgels, interested because they're sort of right across the interstate from us, and they're very supportive. And for those of you who are looking at what we might be trying to, I invite you to go on to St. James on Saturday mornings. I think it's from 9 to 1 every Saturday. But I think it will be really successful here. It will be a great opportunity for people to volunteer and be, another amenity. And again, you give people more opportunities. Last year was really great for the 25th. We had the fireworks. That was a wonderful experience. Any kind of in the community really, really loved that. That was really good.
I love the fireworks. I love the fireworks too. So I don't know if we have any questions out there, but one of the things that's been of interest to me is seeing how something that's been so close to my heart, which is my faith, being mixed with the Steelers, and then being able to meet you. And I obviously have a tremendous love for my family, and part of my family is the McGinley family, which has been so close with the Rooneys in terms of owning the Steelers and being such a huge part of of our life here in Pittsburgh. But you know, my cousin Mary McGinley is a judge.
Yes,
and I know that you and her and Rocky Blyer have worked on a lot of projects.
Yeah, we did.
Too.
Yes, yeah. I worked on her uncle's campaign. Barney McGinley, he's a Superior Court judge, and we were able to work on Mary's campaign. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, and yeah, the McGinleys. So it was Art Rooney and Barney McGinley who actually founded, the Steelers back in 1933, and the McGinley and Rooney families have intermarried to the extent that it's almost one big family. So anyway,
in fact, when they even split up the shares of it, the McGinleys had a bigger percentage than the other percentages of the Rooney family, which I thought was quite enlightening about the relationship between the McGinleys and the Rooneys.
Yep.
Was that just because Uncle Art and them were good friends, or was there
they were business partners? Yeah, they're especially in boxing, and it was something that they did together, and then it was very closely knit, families, and there was some, as I said, some intermarrying that kind of went on, and between the two separate families, and it's really made them really, really close. So yeah, they're an extension of the Rooneys are an extension of McGinley's and vice versa. So
that's great. And they love Duquesne as well. Yes. So let's see if we have any questions out there. Okay. We'll fire them away here. Okay. So who are your patron saints? Who are some of those saints that you've kind of in your life that you've kind of, or in your family's history, have been important? Well,
I'm aptly named after St. Thomas, the Doubting Thomas, the skeptic. So but I really identify myself with Peter, because of his failings and sort of keep coming back. Paul, who was at Stephen, the first martyrdom. I really enjoy the lives of those saints that have had to overcome, their own sort of difficulties. So John the Baptist, I took that as my, as my confirmation name. I'm a little bit of a guy that I, thinks that eats insects and wild honey and sort of speaks from the top of the hill. So,
Thomas sometimes gets a bad rap. There's no doubt they call him Doubting Thomas, but he probably makes the greatest profession of faith in all Scripture by looking at Jesus saying, "My Lord and my God." And it was the courage of Thomas that would start the church in India.
Right.
That, imagine this, for about 1,500 years, the Indian Catholic Church was disconnected from Rome, but they maintained the liturgical and the sacramental life.
Right.
Until years later, they would find it. And now they still celebrate a mass that was started by St. Thomas called the Malabar Rite. And that was at St. Simon and Jude with me. So once a month, I would see this tremendous impact of St. Thomas, the apostle, who, they call him the Doubting Thomas, but boy, he left quite a legacy.
Yeah, and I don't think he was doubting. I think he was just put out that he hadn't been there when the other guys were there. So I think he just, he wanted his own experience that way. So anyway,
I agree.
Those are my favorites.
I don't know. Do we have any more questions out there? All right, here's another question. Any advice for couples who practice different faiths? Tom, this is something that I find a lot more common than ever before. And obviously, I treasure the time that I got to spend with you and your wife, and she even pointed me towards her own church, where I got to do some shopping there with some of the stuff that she's done with the flea market and the work she's done. Yeah. Would you mind talking a little bit about that?
Growing up, I mean, you were really discouraged from marrying somebody of another faith. I mean, especially a non-Christian faith, but a Christian faith yet too. I think that, when you get over, when you have an understanding, our son was raised as a Catholic, went to Catholic grade school and high school. If you have that understanding going forward, then, I mean, trust me, I tried to get her to come over, and I think a couple times I didn't, but her faith is, she's got more faith as a Presbyterian than most Catholics I know. And, the only difference with us is in our faith is how they look at communion. I mean, in my feeling of it,
sure.
I mean, we see it as the body of Christ. They see it more as a symbol of that experience. But I think that, once the ground rules are set in, in terms of how the children would be, once a kid's raised, it's really, God gave us free will, right? They can do what they want to do. But, I think that if you've got those priests, now I support her.
Sure.
All I can, we've raised money for the churches that she's been involved with. They have some wonderful preachers. She, every Sunday morning in our household, she's streaming her church from Swickley Church downtown. They have a wonderful preacher there who I enjoy listening to. So I think that supporting each other's faith is important. But we do have responsibility as the one Catholic parent to see that our children are raised, as Catholics, and we had that understanding going in. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have any more questions out there. If so, we'll take one more here.
Okay.
What's a show or event that you've organized that was most entertaining for you?
So many, but I'll give you one that I really enjoyed that's faith-based. So Father John Odemi, who's now, I think, he was at Duquesne University getting his doctorate degree, and he was stationed down at St. Mary's. And so he came to me because they were building a new church in Nigeria that was called St. James. And he wondered whether or not there was a way to get the stained glass windows and the ornamentals, sacramentals, that weren't being used. Because he said, what happens, when these churches close? And I said, well, I don't know. So we called Tom Zielinski from the diocese, and he said, well, there's a place where all that stuff goes. And I won't say where it goes because, it's like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, yeah.
If you've ever been out there.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to go there.
No. So anyway.
A lot of snakes to deal with.
Yeah, right. So anyway, what the diocese said was, as long as you get the permission of the church, because those churches still live in another church, under another grouping or another umbrella, as long as you get, that permission, because they know exactly where these things came from. So we were able to do that. There was a church in Bridgeville that closed and other things, but it was really funny. So when they were out shopping at this place where all this stuff was, the priest who would be the pastor in Nigeria, he saw a window that he really liked, and he asked Father John. He said, well, what's the priest on there? What's the saint on there? And Father John said, I don't know, but he'll be St. James by the time he gets to Africa. So we raised money because the big expense was buying a container and shipping all the stuff to Nigeria. And we got the pictures of the church. So those churches here in Pittsburgh live through the windows and the sacramentals of the churches here in Pittsburgh. So to me, that's like my favorite event.
You can see, Tom, and that it's interesting because you could be around all these famous people, all the Super Bowls and all that. But it really does come back to that care for those who are most vulnerable. Sure. It does come back to what you have found in our church, and I find every day, which is that Eucharistic presence of Jesus. Right. Because it's in Christ where we find the fullness of who we are. Right. And one of the great manifestations of that is just loving your neighbor, no matter who or what they are, what color skin they are, what issues that they have. Yeah. Tom, I appreciate you coming on the program today. Just as a program note, we're going to have Deacon Tom Lopez, another Tom. He's not a Downing Thomas either, but today, Deacon Tom's going to speak to us, and we're going to talk about the whole idea of marriage and the sacrament of marriage. He runs the diocesan wing of marriage and has worked in our dear parish here at St. John and Paul with a marriage ministry, and it's been one of my favorite apostolates to be part of as I started a foundation called Renew the I Do, which is dedicated to marriage. So I'm looking forward to having Deacon Tom Lopez come on the program. That will be August 11th, Tuesday at 2 p.m. So thanks a lot, Tom. Let's just end with prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Always good to throw a Hail Mary at the end of things.
Yeah, Father, when you say the Lord be with you, to start Mass, you know what I say? Et cum speri tutuo.
Oh,
I still got
Latin.
that aller boy.
That's good.
Pater Noster. That's not our Father. It's Pater Noster.
God bless.